Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion on diversity and the role of women. And let me invite Professor Andrea Flossmann to chair this panel discussion. And welcome. Yes, Andrea, please.
Yeah, thank you, Tara, and welcome everybody to the today's event, which is has a topic diversity and women in cloud physics. So it's not independent, but in fact connected to the plenary talk we had this morning. So where we had a nice explanation already a little bit on the state of the situation of women, but larger diversity in cloud physics. Unfortunately, we didn't have very much time for discussion, and so we hope that we can have the discussion now. I propose to start with presenting the panel. So we will go around and everyone from the panel presents themselves and maybe adds a statement or something which he, she thinks important and should be addressed in this panel, in addition to the talk that we had this morning. And well, I start. My name is Andrea Flossmann. I'm professor for physics in France and president of the outgoing president, well, we say for ICCP. And my remark regarding the presentation from earlier is what I found remarkable, that you lump together. So you, for example, Europe for you was one entity. And coming from inside Europe, I have to say it's not, for me, it's not something which is homogeneous, but very different. I got my education in Germany, but live and work since almost 30 years in France. And I find it very differently because 30 years ago, during my education, my physics professor told me, what do I want here? Women, and this is a quote, have to be barefoot and pregnant. And well, another teacher of mine in cloud physics, she told me, better stop the field because I would never be a professor in Germany. That's one of the reasons I left. And in fact, I have to confirm that in France, it's a lot more common for women to be have positions of responsibility in cloud physics. I think it has changed since 30 years, but it's still, I remark, and well, the younger ones can comment, differences. Okay, so I don't want to monopolize. Maybe Zamin, you.
Yes, thanks for having us here and having this topic on the agenda. My name is Zamin Kanji. I lead an experimental atmospheric physics program at ETH Zurich. And a remark regarding the recent efforts of diversity, equity, inclusion in the academics, I would say one thing that I realized has become important in trying to get this conversation going is to actually sort of recreate the table at which the conversation is happening. So basically, rather than inviting people to join the conversation, we need to recreate this space, because even in inviting people to join the conversation, there's an assumption that you are somehow leading or controlling the conversation. And so my experience has been that if to make it truly equal for everybody to contribute, it has to be sort of started from scratch. So I'll just put that out there as potentially something to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Karin?
Hello, I'm Karin Ardon-Dryer. Again, thank you so much for having us and giving us the platform to present some of the data that we found. I'm originally a cloud physics. My background, my PhD was, and as I path through the postdoc, I'm now trying to get back to cloud physics. Most of my work is on dust storm and dust particles. As for the point that I would like to mention, I have to say, Andrea, many of the comments we heard, even from people from the survey, had a lot of connection to what you were saying. So we see these things even today. And it would be something very interesting to highlight and to think, how can we fix that and not give the stress for female cloud physics participant from not having a family, or the stress of even having that option. And another thing that I hope we would do moving forward is maybe perform the survey on a regular basis, every decade, every 5 years, to see we're making action. Are we actually progressing? Although only a quarter of our cloud physics community answered the survey, I'm hoping that at the next time we will do it, we will be able to get half of, at least, of the community.
Thank you. Corinna?
Yeah, thanks for the invitation to this panel, and thanks for the opening statements, which I already found very inspiring. So I thought a little bit about why I'm here and why I'm interested in the topic. I mean, obviously, as a female professor in cloud physics in Germany, things have changed in the last decade, I think. But I'm still often put on the spot as a role model, and that forces me to think about these topics. And on the one side, I'm thinking a lot about unconscious biases that I have. I'm thinking about my own research group and how to overcome biases during hiring processes, for example, and how to benefit best from diversity within a smaller research group. And then I'm also thinking a lot on how to what sort of actions we can do within research projects or larger coordinated programs, where we actually, at least in Germany and in Europe, we often have money to do some initiatives to improve the situation, but it's very hard to come up with good action items. And therefore, I'm also looking here for inspiration on how to address these topics more in this more institutionalized context. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinna. Sue?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. And I like Corinna. I really appreciate the invitation to be on this panel and to have this discussion with all these amazing people on this panel. I am a professor in cloud processes, cloud physics, and dynamics at Colorado State University. A little of my background, because this is often asked in such scenarios. I grew up in South Africa at a time in which South Africa was undergoing tremendous political turmoil and strife. I have been involved in all sorts of uprisings, shall we say, or activities in terms of enhanced diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I've seen and gained a lot of experience there. I've also been serving on a DEI committee here at Colorado State University. And Corinna and I have actually had a number of discussions on this by virtue of some common institutions. And so we've thought quite a lot together about these sorts of things. Growing up in South Africa, I was told I could not be an engineer because I was a woman, or I could not be a physicist because I was a woman. And if I chose to go down that pathway, I would have to be an exceptionally brilliant person to even get a regular job in these areas. So that was a number of years ago now. Things have changed, but nevertheless, that built some resolve in me to go about changing that scenario. So like Corinna, I've been thinking about various things in terms of my own biases, in terms of institutional biases within our groups and ways in which to address that. And I think, Andrea, you asked us to make some sort of statement in terms of what would be really important. I think what is critical, certainly for me, and what I hear from a lot of people, because we've ended up giving a number of talks by virtue of our experiences as women in field campaigns, on faculties and so on, what I hear often is that role models are important. And so this is, that would be my statement for today, is that role models are really important. So thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rama?
Hello, everybody. I actually am an engineer and I'm a recent entrant into cloud physics. I do fluid mechanics of different kinds. I'm a professor in the International Center for Theoretical Sciences, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Bengaluru. So I listened with great interest to the plenary session today, and it was very informative. In particular, I was amazed or, disappointed that, people feel, there's 25% of women who feel that their environment was hostile at some point or they faced bullying. This number was a bit staggering for me, and I think this should be discussed in some detail today. Another thing which in India we've not really started talking about too much is unconscious bias. And this is another thing which is really rampant, and I work with many young women who face things like this. So I'd like to learn more about that from today's meeting.
Thank you, Rama. Luis?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Andrea. So thank you. Hello, everyone. So my name is Luis Antonio Ladino, and I'm a research scientist at the National University of Mexico. And yeah, so thank you for the invitation today. I think it was very good to have this plenary talk this morning. I really enjoyed it, and it was very hard for us, Zamin, Karin, and myself, and our students to prepare this talk because we are not the experts in this field. We are all scientists working in cloud physics or ice nucleation and trying to jump into this to get used with the proper language, to use with the terminology, trying to cover different topics. It is very difficult, but it was very challenging, but I'm very happy with the outcome. And I hope people will enjoy it. And I hope one of the good things that we have to do, or maybe one of the most important things to trying to fix these gaps or to reduce these gaps is trying to make people aware of, because sometimes we know this, we hear about this, but we say, this is not related to me. I don't feel that, and so on. But when we show the statistics, when we show the numbers, and those numbers that are coming from us, because we answered the survey, we got the data from the papers that we as a community publish, and there is a lot of information there that is hidden and we don't see it. So I think it was pretty good that we had this opportunity at the ICCP meeting to show this. And there is much more to do, but I think that we have to go step by step. So Karin said that she was a little bit disappointed that only 25% of the people answered the survey. That's true. But as I said, we have to go step by step. We have to go slowly to make people aware of this. And I think this is a very, very big step, and I think the idea is now to continue moving in this direction. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Tara?
You really want me to make some comment?
Yes, of course.
I am Tara. I think the people sitting in this room might know me by ICCP 2020 because I have been sending emails to you lately with that. About me, I think I have also faced some thing like Andrea mentioned. Once upon a time, I wanted to work on aerosol science when I finished my master's. So I approached some scientists and they said that you cannot work during the night time. Being a lady, you cannot be working during the night time. So you should be looking for somebody else to do the research like that. But I have not taken taken that as the end of the road or something like that. So I have my will. I have my wishes. So I don't want to put down anything. So I'll go forward with my objectives, my desires to do something good. So I have gone ahead with that way, and I think the point is that we should not take. We should believe in ourselves and go forward. Don't let anyone bring you down. So then you will not feel really. You will not feel that any gender bias or anything like that. You should not bring that in your head. That is one thing I believe in. And yeah, definitely if we see something like that, we should really eradicate that aspect. And it was very disturbing to see that 25% number. I think we should take that out in a community like this. Though it was a small number of people that reacted, but it is significant. So I just want to say that. So yeah, I have many of my young colleagues here. Many of them, some of them work with me, and some of them are in other institutes also. So I would suggest to hear their views as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Tara seems to be frozen. Have you finished, Tara, or?
I have finished. Thank you. I said thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I hope I didn't forget anyone from the panel. If not, then I think we should open the discussion now also to people from the floor. I kindly ask you to raise your hand if you have a point. So you click on the smiley, it's the 6 symbol. And we will try to take you one after the other to make your point. Or you can use the chat also if you're shy and don't want to speak.
There is a hand raised.
Hi.
By Tuli.
Yes.
Yeah, he's already spotlighted.
Okay.
Excellent. So I can go ahead. Right. I came in a little bit late, so apologies, but I came in when Rama was discussing unconscious bias, which is something that I've spoken to a lot of colleagues about as well, and yeah, it's fascinating actually that topic, like just how we all have it. It's just inherent to being human, but then how we can address it in professional settings. So I guess from my own kind of perspective, I've noticed it with CVs for candidates, moving from an English-speaking setting into a German-speaking setting, they have very different ways of putting together a CV. Like, in fact, you put your picture on your CV, your date of birth on your CV as well, which coming from the US and then living in the UK was very new to me. And then having this kind of information, I think, that can just introduce some bias itself. Even having the name on a CV. When I was living in the UK, there was a lot of debate about even taking the name off of the CV for like a supervisor. So it's really just based on skills and experience. So it's just subtle things like this I've discussed with colleagues before, but there are probably other ways to address unconscious bias in the workplace, and CVs, of course, are just one aspect of that. But I just it's great that people are starting to think about it. So I would be happy to hear if anybody else has thoughts on CVs or other unconscious bias or other ways of tackling unconscious bias in academia. So, thank you.
Bipin, are you wanting to talk something, or?
I think Corinna wants to react.
Okay.
Yeah, this statement immediately spoke to me because I'm from Germany, and I I grew up with the CVs with pictures and date of birth, but yeah, have now learned that is not common all over the world. And I actually in Germany we are moving away from that for the more higher level hirement procedures, like for professorship appointments. There people have become much more aware and discuss academic age instead of the date of birth and there the picture is not important, but how do you change a culture for applications for PhD positions, postdoc positions? I think you probably have to train the people who are hiring, and that is ongoing, but it's very slow, I think. And it's always a problem that the people who are interested in the topic, they already know a lot, and they sort of get the information themselves and train themselves. But those who don't want to, how do you reach them? And I think that's the real challenge there.
We have a raised hand from Paul Field.
So on this topic of making applications fair, so the ones I've been involved in lately, they seem to do this. Well, you don't use CVs. CVs just auxiliary information. So what you do is you say, there's 5 areas I need to have evidence in that you're good at. So using computers, using models, any aerosol clouding experience. And so then you write in that box your evidence about how you fulfill that criteria. And then at the end of the day, you've got 10 people and they've all got the same boxes filled in with the same sorts of information. And you can it's fairer. And then, you score each one and you've got an objective measure then of how people scored on the things you're really interested in, and ignore all the other hobbies or whatever as just auxiliary to the fact of getting somebody to do your job. So that's down to the HR departments of the various institutes to integrate that approach.
We have one comment on the chat from Anna Rayleigh. Anna Rayleigh, do you want to give it orally or do you want me to read it?
I can speak. Can you hear me?
Okay, I read it then. That goes both ways as well. I would like to know pronouns and how my future supervisor identifies to find those role models I'm seeking within my own gender. Representation matters, and eliminating names, photos may reduce bias but removes identities. Change the culture, not the people. Okay, and then we had a raised hand from Sue.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to Paul's comment, and really I love your comment too. But Paul, we've also instituted here, I love that idea, what you're doing. We've taken that another step further, or perhaps in a different direction, in the sense that when we interview candidates now, we have standardized questions. We decide on the questions ahead of time, and there's no going off that transcript, so to speak. So there's no slipping down the line of how many children do you have? Are you married? Those kinds of questions that delve into personal life. What activities do you like doing? And so from that point of view, it keeps everything anchored in the scientific discussion for, sort of focused on the skills that you're seeking for the position. So that's a great idea in terms of what you're doing. I love that.
Thanks. Yes, and actually, I forgot that we actually do have HR representatives at them as well. So to make sure everyone stays on target.
Yeah, us too. Actually, we have to adhere to really strict guidelines on that. So we have people in the room in all of our interviews.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, Rama, go ahead.
So I love the idea. I'm just thinking, for example, when we have to look at application for people for faculty position, what I normally do, I don't look at the name of the cover letter. I don't care who is it. Unfortunately, and I've had that experience multiple times, even just from reading the letter, I could identify who's a female and who's a male by the way they wrote the letter. And I had high success rate of identifying the person because I would read the letter and then I'll go check if I'm right or wrong. So I really love the poll idea where we really don't have any information. I understand, Anarli, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I understand the comment that you mentioned. Especially for student, it's very important to know who you're going to work with. But I think if we're trying to come from the other direction, we want to try to be as not biased as possible, especially for hiring new faculty for our departments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rama, you had you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about unconscious bias, not just in hiring, which is very, very important, but something which happens every day, all the time. And it's a systematic thing which, undermines the woman's self-esteem, both from family, friends, and especially the work environment. So is there a professional way to deal with this? That's my question to the other panelists.
Rama, are you seeking examples? Is that what you are asking for?
No, I'm asking for how would you handle it? Like, is there a formal training you can give for unconscious bias? Is there something which can be adopted easily by institutions?
Somebody has raised their hand.
Yeah, Chris? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at the University of Reading, for example, everybody in the university has to have training for unconscious bias. I think that's a really, basic thing that every institute should be doing. And if they're not, there's a real obvious question, why not? I kind of wanted to ask another question, which is about your survey, which was really eye-opening, I think. I kind of wonder whether it's worth having a follow-up survey where you kind of drill down into some of these headline figures that you found. I'd really like to know, for people who have experienced harassment and bullying, where did that happen? Was it in your host institution? Was it a conference like this? Was it with another member of the cloud physics community? With somebody completely different? I think it'd be really cool to drill down to those things. And I'm curious if you have any ideas how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I could add that the question regarding bullying and harassment was specifically framed to be within the cloud physics community. So we asked if you face bullying and harassment from somebody from within the community. Of course, I mean, it's subjective who you think is within the cloud physics community or not, but yeah. And regarding unconscious bias or like facing day-to-day challenges, I definitely think that having some sort of institutionalized training and actually trying to institutionalize the processes of fighting unconscious bias is definitely a useful way forward. But I think also trying to sort of I mean, at ETH, what is suggested is that we sort of register in these sort of regular workshops to remind ourselves, because it's something that you can easily slip into. If you've taken a workshop after 1 or 2 years, you may sort of forget some of the things you've learned or stop practicing them. So to sort of regularly remind yourself of this. But also, I've been in situations where you have to find allies as well to fight some of these biases. I think that's very important in addition to role models, what Sue mentioned. And so I think having some allies, and then I also have been in a situation where I thought I was just moving around my day-to-day work when I was in a lab about 10 years ago, and I was with about 6 or 7 males, standing around an aerosol mass spectrometer waiting for training. And there was one female PhD student there. And by far, out of all of us, she had the most training. She was a grad student. And and there was some conversation that happened there. And I think at that point, I just reacted and saying, actually, so-and-so is the most well-trained here, so we should probably listen to her and see what she has to say, rather than sort of discussing about this. But it was only years later that when I then spoke to this student who had then advanced, realized that actually that comment had meant a lot in that moment for the student. So I think it's basically when you hear something, something happening, or if you witness something happening, maybe not remaining silent, or remaining silent is probably not the best approach as well. And I think that may sort of start creating a safer space in terms of trying to change the culture.
Can I say something to that? I mean,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the number of people who've had experiences in the cloud physics community and in the broader scientific community is actually far more than we ever realize. And I think it's only when we sit down and have conversations like this that you really realize the number of poor experiences that people have had, and the need to draw, as you said, I mean, on a support network or on somebody who you can really trust to go back to. I remember being concerned at CSU for a while for the number of female students who were leaving our program. We have a master's program and a PhD program, and they were leaving the program midway through between the master's and the PhD. And I could not work out why this was on the go. So I brought together a number of different groups to talk with them about why this was on the go, fully expecting this to be the answer, to be something along the lines of family or moving with partners or children or those constraints. And the overwhelming response that came back was that people believed they couldn't do it by virtue of the way they had been treated at different phases in their entire education, from kindergarten all the way through high school and into college. That was the overwhelming response, which really, that shocked me. So these are things that are less obvious, right? Maybe family and partners and spouses, maybe that's more of an obvious response, but this is sort of an unconscious response that really needed to be addressed. So that was an eye-opening thing for me, and that's really sort of tried to help me boost more of that. I know that when I joined the faculty at CSU, there were very few women on the faculty, and this is the sort of role model. I had a lot of students come by and say, it's so wonderful to see more women on the faculty, because this is the sense, I mean, that you were talking about, of allies or people you can confide in, people who you can trust from that point of view. So, these are some of the unconscious things, the needs for role models, the sort of unconscious unknowns within people that we need to address.
Yeah, I was wondering whether we could have some reply from the younger people in the audience, if there are any.
Yeah, Andrea, there is one 11th grade student attending our conference, and she's there in our hall today. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should invite her to say something.
Yes, there's also someone, Mercy is saying, I can read what is said. The 25% who said they faced bullying and harassment in the survey were white females. I guess it would be because they probably understand what it is. In many developing countries, especially in Asia, many women and other minority genders still endure it without knowing it. The bully also is unconscious of it. Yeah, that's true. So
Yes.
Tara, can you ask the student?
Second, Mercy, you want to talk?
So is she the one who wrote the comment?
Yeah, Mercy. No. This is another. Mercy is another colleague of mine. But the girl that I mentioned, it is she is Vaishnavi Pandey. Harish.
That would be great if she feels like sharing her thoughts.
Yeah. She's the youngest participant of ICCP.
Yes, ma'am. I am audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am. So I am Vaishnavi Pandey. I'm an 11th standard student studying in Sabyasachi Vidyapit, Ujjain, India. And I am interested in cloud microphysics and dynamics and satellite meteorology. And I want to become in future I want to join Indian Air Force as a meteorological officer. So that is my dream.
And how are your studies going? Do you feel comfortable here?
Yes, ma'am. So as I am interested in to focus my aspects and I want to gain knowledge in this field and also I want to enhance my knowledge through my prerequisite physics and mathematics such as basic subjects.
Wow.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Luis?
Yeah, thank you. So I might want to say something about mercy. And yeah, I think this is not only related to Asia. I mean, I think Asia was an example, but here in South America, Latin America is also the same. It's something cultural because it's like, when you are a minority or whatever, so you have to somehow follow the rules. You should not complain, just simply do it because that's the way it is. And you might not be aware about these issues as the white women or white minorities that they might have better information or they might raise their hand and say, hey, stop there. But for us or many other cultures, it's very difficult to say stop or to say I don't like it or to say, this is not correct because we have been taught that that's the way it is, and you have to simply follow it. Otherwise, you might be in trouble. And then, yeah, it's very difficult because it's very cultural and it's so difficult to take it out or to, So so I fully agree with what Mercy said. And this is related to many different cultures. Thank you.
We have
Daryl has a question.
Yeah. Do you want to say it, Daryl, or shall I read it?
No, he's raised his hand. No.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this comment is to not only gender bias, but country bias. I know, and Luis knows this, having been a professor for a number of years in Mexico, it was quite interesting from two perspectives that how reviewers responded to papers from Latin America as opposed to the North America and Europe. And that was found in two ways. One, even though I'd be a co-author on a number of papers from Mexico, Argentina, Chile, the reviewers would almost without doubt say, oh, this paper really needs to improve the English. And it's like, what? I read the papers very carefully, and I can guarantee you the English was spot on. And yet their bias was clear. Their bias was, oh, this is from Mexico, and most of these names are Hispanic, so obviously they don't have very good English. And the same thing is happening in Asia as well. So I don't know. I think that journals should not be allowed to put names and institutes and countries on the header. I think that the reviewers should be completely blind.
Yeah. That's a good point.
There are already journals who are doing that. Not most of the journals. And Greg just put a comment in the chat. I don't know if he wants to come up and tell us this comment, but it will be very interesting.
Greg needs to move a little further up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm on the AMS Board of Editors because I'm chief editor of the AMS Monograph Collection. And this has been an extensive conversation at AMS in recent years. And right now, there's a number of journals that I think it's next year will move to a double-blind review process where the reviewers will not be told the names of the authors. Now, from the subject matter and from the citations, they may be able to guess that, but at least they will not be told that. It's not being done for all journals yet. They want to do it for a subset of the journals first, mainly because of cost reasons, I think, and they also want to explore how it works. So certainly within some of the journals, this is a very active topic of conversation, and hopefully this experiment will be a success, and then we can move that way, at least in the AMS journals and maybe in other journals as well. And then another thing that maybe the next commission should consider is whether we should move to a blinded review process when we look at the abstract, because when we reviewed the abstracts, we were certainly aware of who the authors were. But I think this is something the commission could explore for the 2024 meeting. And incidentally, we tried to give students priority for oral talks if they were rated similarly as other presentations. But I would encourage, maybe we can talk about that at our next commission meeting, is that for 2024, maybe let's try a blinded review process and just see what happens. We wouldn't have the same emphasis if we did that, and country balance and some gender representation that we tried to get this time, but I think it would be an interesting experiment. So those are just a couple points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Yeah, we have first Luis is asking for the floor, then
Yes.
Rama, and then Sue.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this point that Darrell raised is very important, and I wish it was only the English, but it's not only the English. So sometimes the reviewers also are not very objective, and when they see that the first authors or the main authors are from developing countries, they are more picky than if the paper is coming from a very prestigious university or is coming from a very prestigious professor. You know, when they I think the way they evaluate or they review the papers are not equal. And I think my name, my institution, my country, and the language I speak should not matter here. So I think that what Greg said, that the AMS journal is moving in this direction, I think this might help. And yeah, so let's see, as Greg said, how this experiment goes. And I hope it will be very positive, because then in this case, everyone will be treated equally. Yeah, thank you.
Rama?
Yeah, so I wanted to add to this point, like it's a very good idea that in 2024, if we can have, all the abstracts reviewed without the author names, which is great. But today in the other plenary session, I noticed that there were actually more women who are asking to give posters and more men who are asking to give oral presentations. So can there be something in the conference flyer which says, go ahead and ask for an oral presentation or something like that to encourage women?
Sue?
Yeah, I wanted to add to Greg's point. Also an AMS editor, and something that we've had a lot of discussion around is really enhancing the diversity of our reviewers. So perhaps we don't sort of think in this way about the reviewer side of things, but we've really been consciously trying to seek reviewers from different countries, to really different countries all over the world, across the experience spectrum, across the gender spectrum. I'm really trying to enhance the diversity of reviewers. It's critical not to slip into just one mode or one characterization of reviewers. So I think that that's another thing that the AMS has been striving to to enhance, and that's good all around, right? It's good to enhance the experience of reviewers for a start, and it's good for paper assessments all around. So it's encouraging, I think, what the AMS is doing in this regard.
Corinna?
I wanted to come back to Rama's point on the bias in people asking for our representation and sort of our own unconscious bias that translate into our everyday action and into our own behavior. I do think it helps a lot bringing this topic to the table again and again and talking about it in various contexts, like we do here now at the conference. Therefore, I think it's so great that we had the plenary plus this panel discussion today and have that as a very broadly advertised topic and something that many people now will think about a little bit. And also at our home institutions, I think we should talk about that in formalized ways, but also in informal settings within our own research group, that over lunch, if we are allowed to do that again, and also sort of coffee break discussions. And I mean, that also relates to the comment by Sandeep here in the in the written comment, whether training alone is sufficient. I think, the training is not sufficient, but it has to be really something that people incorporate and make it their own topics and think about how it relates to their own behavior and work. And one last comment there, I think we should also translate it into a positive, in a positive context. We should not only highlight the problematic experiences that people have, but also show a road to a more to positive side effects if there is a more equal treatment of everybody, if diversity is really valued, and if we then would benefit from more diverse views in the research group. What are the things that would contribute positively if these topics are addressed? And I think that would help them to get people more involved and then also thinking about their own behavior, like whether they request an oral presentation or not. Thank you.
I'm not sure who is first, Louis or Zamin. Maybe Zamin, you start?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to move my down. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is that you find a different variety of sort of mentors, role models, and allies, and so there are a lot of people who may, in having discussions, at least in my experience, that will agree with the benefits of diversifying or diversity, equity, inclusion. They agree regarding how what are the differences between equal and equitable, and these sort of subtle differences. But then, of course, there is a certain amount of work that is required, certain amount of effort that's required to ensure that you fight these biases or treat or change the way things are done, so changing the status quo. And that's where I found a bit of challenge, is that you'll find a lot of people who agree, and then there's a fraction of those people who are willing to do the work going forward or to speak up. And I think that's where the challenge is in finding the allies, in my experience, is that how do you find the people who are willing to speak up, to partner up with you, to sort of support this support network? And there are a lot of factors that come into play. For instance, we are all in some form or another part of an institution or a system, and pre-tenured faculty may be a little bit concerned about being too vocal because they're afraid that their tenureship could be at risk, and so there are sort of systemic issues, I guess, also in where people may want to actually to fight these unconscious biases or speak up, but how are they to fight the system in which they are completely a part of as well? And that's I think that's a big challenge, is how to sort of go ahead and do that. And I have no solution to that. It's just something that I know I faced and discussed with a lot of my peers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Daryl, you want to say something?
Sure. I made the comment about thinking locally and acting thinking globally and acting locally because as a white male and a white old male who's been in this field for quite some time, I've seen things change, and a lot of the off-color jokes, a lot of the racist jokes, a lot of the things that you'd hear all the time, that's died down quite a bit, in the workplace and everything else. But it's partially died down because you have to call it out. If somebody is making a joke, if something making a comment, then you just have to say something about it, whether you're the person closest to doing something about it. But I remember, some of you have probably remembered some of the papers by Baker and Latham and the trainment and mixing and some of the really groundbreaking work. And it wasn't until the Cloud Physics Conference in 1986 that I realized that Baker was a Marcia Baker, and she did that on purpose because back then she really felt like she was not going to be listened to or she was not going to be published if she used her first name. If you look at all those papers, it's always Baker, M. Baker, and so that was kind of for me a real eye opener that of where the bias was. So I'm just saying that I think things are changing. They're changing slowly, but locally we've got to do something around our own space, and that way I think that we can make a difference.
Yeah, there are two more comments in the chat from Tara and from Anarelli. You want to give them orally also? Tara?
I was only seconding Daryl regarding his message, and I do think that it is see when we do that way, only we can actually how can we remove the biases. It will be there in every sector, every place we go, but we have to somehow overcome that situation. So we have to do something. We have to have a determination to overcome that. Then only it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Anarelli.
Can you hear me?
You have the floor. Can you give the mic to Anarelli?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my comment was on the value of DEI work, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. From my personal experiences, I've had to choose, do I focus on my research or do I push initiatives forward on diversity, equity, inclusion issues within my institution or my lab department? Because I feel passionate for both, but I can't do both as an early career. And I guess as any person, it's hard to do both. But if I don't do it, I feel like others won't do it, or it just won't get done. And so just in general, what I've noticed, the DEI work, in at least for when we were grad students, it was coming from the bottom up, the grad students were pushing forward, asking for things and starting initiatives, but it's cutting into our research time, or just for early career professionals that are observing these inequalities and trying to make changes for themselves and for those who will come in the future. Their promotion packages aren't necessarily including all the effort that they're putting in for DEI work, for mentorship, for outreach and education and reaching out to the public. There's all this extra work that is done And a lot of these people are from minoritized groups. And so it's the burden, it just keeps adding and adding. And for me, it feels like as an early career professional in my institution, being asked to do so much to help rise, I guess, or increase the issues or improve the issues on DEI within the institution, in addition to doing excellent research. But then I'm not really being awarded or not awarded, recognized for both. And my promotion isn't based on the efforts I do with mentoring or DEI, it's based on publications. And I might not have publication that year because I was on a committee doing all these other things, trying to improve the lab or something. This is just something to think about, I guess. If we're trying to make changes, make sure that the people that are doing the work are also being paid and acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Susan, I think, was next.
I'm not sure. I think, Karin, you've had your hand up. Karin, you've had your hand up for quite a while. Are you wanting to speak? Yours was up ahead of mine. Karin?
It's fine. I just wanted to make a small comment to Annerly as an assistant professor, someone who's not tenured yet. We cannot change the world, but you can do small things. Yes, I put an effort on my research, but I try to do small things to help increase diversity in my community, in my university, in my department. You will not get benefits for it, and it's fine because you do it for your soul. You do it because you think it's important. But we do need people at higher position. As Zamin said earlier, people who are already tenured, they can move things easily than untenured people. But it's a work of community. Not one person can make the change.
Okay, so Andrea, maybe I'll speak now. So this sort of is related in somewhat to what Daryl said and to what Anarelli said and what Karin has said, is that addressing DEI issues is incumbent on all of us. I remember in recent election memories when President Trump was elected, people asked or made the statement that they could not believe that women had voted in that regard. And why is it only incumbent upon women? We need to change as a community. To Anarelli's point, if you, having been a woman in great minority initially when I joined CSU, you ended up on a lot of administrative committees because they need a representative. So if there are only 2 or 3 of you out of 20 or 25 people on a faculty, you end up doing a tremendous amount of those kinds of service activities because you are representative or representing a group of people. So that does come our way. I view it more as a scenario of the now and that it needs to be followed through. But I do think it's really important, coming to Daryl's point, that if you're in a scenario and you are in a position to speak up, that we need to speak up. A lot of early career scientists have asked me ways in which to handle situations like that. What do you say when person X says this or person Y does that? How do you address that? I think it's really important to get people talking and sharing experiences. I've given some seminars on this to different institutions, and I frequently get early career scientists emailing me behind the scenes saying, I love the fact that you admitted that you've been sexually harassed, that you've run into problems on an airplane, in the field, that you've run into issues, even sitting around tables as scientists being the only woman in the room, and people bring food in and they expect me as the woman in the room to get up and serve the food. This is at high level scientific meetings. People love the fact that that people who are already tenured and in those positions have run into these experiences, and that they share them because it's common to all of us. And so I think that as soon as you feel comfortable to speak up, it's really incumbent on all of us to speak up and say, as Daryl said, that's not acceptable. That's not how we treat people in this environment. And that catches on. We can train, but ultimately we have to change the way that we all think about things. And those things, I think, help.
Okay, let me get some of the remarks from the chat, because this is really interesting. So Mercy has a remark seconding Anarelli and says, just compare the number of attendees yesterday and today. And she has a point there, because we have half the attendees than yesterday. And Daryl is agreeing, saying this conversation is uncomfortable to many. Then we have a comment of Radhika saying, if instead of gender, everyone try to focus on the quality and not the mentor or godfather, then maybe there is no need of trainings. I was wondering whether this would be a younger person who has this remark. I don't know if this person would like to step forward and explain a little more.
Radhika? Is it Radhika?
Yeah, Radhika.
Yeah. Would you like to come forward and explain? You will be highlighted. No. Is that okay? Sandeep? Radhika would like to talk?
It's already spotlighted, yes.
I guess not. Then we have a comment from Peter Bruckner. Does he want to talk? I think it's an important point you're raising. So
thanks. Yeah, so I wanted to bring up that as someone who myself has a disability, wanted to address that we need more consideration for people with disabilities in research. Although I personally haven't felt like I've had too much trouble on my own end, I know a lot of people with disabilities face a lot of trouble getting their needs met in terms of like representation, accommodations in classes, accessibility of online documents, posters, presentations, etc. I just feel like people with disabilities need to be better and fully included in the scientific research process, and need to contribute more to speak up in terms of like what would be helpful for them as they go through their research and as they participate in conferences, you name it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have the others are mainly reactions. So Sandeep is reacting to Daryl, saying, true, there's still many who allow women to continue with their professional life. And Daryl is remarking that he is surprised that the survey didn't include topic of salary disparity. So as Karin is raising her hand, so she can comment on that and give you her own comment. Karin, you are asking for the floor?
No, sorry. I think it was left from.
Oh, it was
earlier.
left. Okay.
I can say something about Darrell's point, and yeah, I think this is a very good point that we somehow miss it, because that's clear that there is a gap there as well with the salaries, and yeah, I think this wasn't with purpose. We simply missed this. I mean, there are several points that we could have included in the survey, but we didn't want it to make it so long, because then people get tired and they say, no, I don't want to spend half an hour filling up the survey. But if we decided to continue with these surveys, as for example, like Karin suggested, to do it every 5 years or every 10 years, this is definitely a key point that should be included in a follow-up survey. So thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, Karin?
I just wanted to add that we did sort of indirectly address the salary by giving it as an option for people who thought who had been affected as minorities, if their career had been affected, and salary was one of the options. But we didn't address it directly. One of the challenges with asking the question about a salary disparity in a survey, rather than looking at statistics coming out from an HR department or so, is that a lot of the times people who are subjected to lower salaries because of gender or minority or whatever other factor don't actually know at the time that they're actually receiving a lower salary than the counterparts. And I know specific examples where people found out, 5 or 6 years after the occurrence that, in institutions in developed nations where there's a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work going on, that they were indeed being paid lower than their male counterparts at the same level as assistant professors. But of course, they only figured this out years after that was the case.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised, and I think there are no new comments in the chat because we have reached the hour allocated to our panel discussion. So one last chance to say something, get something off your chest that hasn't been mentioned yet. Daryl?
I just wanted to thank you all so much. This was a touchy subject, and when Luis approached me about it in Zamin, I said, yes, 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 because it was something that we have failed to do for many, many years. I'm sorry there's so few people, not few people, I'm sorry so much fewer people in the audience, but to me, that's just an example of exactly what we're talking about here. And maybe they have good reasons, but I really think that this is a good start, and it's something that we need to stay on top of and not back off for a second. So thank all of you very, very much.
Yeah, and this is a message in particular addressed to the new president to consider this.
Well, I would say that is going to be one of the major thrusts of our activity in the next 3 years in preparing for 2024, and also looking to really try and address these issues. And I'll just make a note that right now, if you look at the members of our commission, I would say we are still very underrepresented, in particular from South America, where we only have Rachel as our only representative. And we have no representatives from Africa. If there are people in particular in those regions who are interested in serving in the commission, please contact me, and I would be happy to consider a nomination from either of those two regions to try and make sure that we're more diverse and including a large representation from worldwide of our community. So I'll say, if there's any DEI issues you want brought forward from anybody, please contact myself or any other member of the commission, and we'll make a point to address those issues. And I think we need to repeat this conversation again in 2024. And hopefully we'll have much larger participation. Maybe we can encourage more participation. But anyways, this is a very important issue moving forward. In order for cloud physics to advance, we need to get contributions from everybody. There can't be groups that feel marginalized or isolated, because not only is it unfair and it's not proper, But if we're only getting input from a third to a half of the people in the world who are contributing, we're limiting the growth of our own field, because there's outstanding scientists of all genders, all races, people with disabilities. So it's going to be a big issue moving forward. And I really appreciate Luis and Karin for organizing this today. I think it was a great contribution. I've been attending cloud physics meetings since 1988. And we've never had a conversation like this before. And hopefully that this is just showing that we're beginning to make some progress in this issue. So thank everybody very much for attending, and I'll stop there.
Well, there's nothing I can add regarding the closing remarks. Again, also thanks from myself. Also thanks to all the public that shared their concerns with us. And we keep to the subject. We don't let it go. We persist and we will go on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there hand raising or just saying? Okay.
No, this is just agreement.
No, okay.
Applause. It's applause if you want.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Wonderful panel. Thank you.